So that would be a cool. Hi, everybody, and welcome to a special episode of Stories of Hope. It's kind of like merging. Falon and I had a podcast called We're Never Stuck. And I think this is like a merge of that. And maybe I'll upload those podcasts on here because they're so great. But Falon has been on Stories of Hope, but now we're just doing a conversation about, I guess maybe both of ours could be stories of hope from panic attacks, and also just maybe having a helpful conversation about panic attacks. Because did someone reach out to you and asked if we would cover this topic?
Yes, they were wondering like what exactly like causes a panic attack and how you like how we both like went through having like anxiety or like panic and symptoms, and they were just like I was like I gotta have to talk to Lily so we could reach out and like talk to people and explain how we both felt with panic. I don't fear them anymore. I'm not sure if when did you get to that spot?
Oh, for me, well, when I think it went in stages, but I stopped fearing them less when I did come into the principles understanding. So about 6 years ago, I started to have more understanding and less fear. But I do think it was still like intellectual. It was kind of like, um, I think there was still a little bit of fear. Although I knew that if I didn't resist and like try to stop it, they actually didn't come as much. But um, I think there was still a part of me that was like, oh, I hope I don't have a panic attack. And I don't know when it kind of, and then I stopped having panic attacks. Really when I stopped fearing them and for me, what made the biggest difference was I had spent 7 years after I had my first panic attack trying to like make my life so I would never have a panic attack, whether it was having a really good in quotes, like a long nighttime routine. Cause I was like, if I can make sure I get enough sleep, um, make sure, hold on, I'm thinking, I think you have flashing lights behind you. Do you?
Do I? Oh my God, I
Sorry, I'm
do.
like, it's kind of distracting me.
I'm gonna shut those off. I didn't even recognize those. They're here we go. Do you see them now?
No, they stopped.
Okay. My son has his room has the best Wi-Fi. I'm sorry about that.
Oh,
But
good.
he
Oh, no,
had
it's cool. I was just like, oh my God, my brain was feeling kind of crazy.
I
Um,
thought it was my computer for a second, but I didn't realize they were on over there flashing.
ah, ah. Okay. Okay, back to, well, okay, I don't know. I want to make sure this is the most helpful conversation. What I thought was going to help my panic attacks didn't. Because so for me, I thought I had to get enough sleep. I was so afraid if I didn't get enough sleep that I would panic. And then I would do like a long morning routine as well. I was like, I have to make sure I eat enough food and I meditate and I don't drink caffeine. And also something that really contributed to me having panic attacks was I was so on guard for them because I thought if I could like catch it early, I could stop it. And I also was afraid that if I panicked, could then like eventually lose control and lose my mind. So all of these things that I thought were helping me were actually like keeping me in fight or flight, keeping me, because when we have a panic attack, we do go into a stress response, like our body does think we're really in danger. So all of these, stress chemicals are released. So that would be really helpful if we were really in danger. But so for me, why I think was in a kind of a pretty chronic state of stress and anxiety for 7 years was because of my fear of panic and because I kept thinking about it. Like I think about it during the day, like is one coming? I mean, not 24/7, but a lot. Um, and then as I said, in the night, in the morning, but it was like scanning. And I thought I needed to think to keep myself safe. And also I resisted panic attacks. I think a huge part is the resistance, and if you're watching the video, you can see that I'm like squeezing my hands and like putting up my fists. It's like, I think the resistance of the panic is fear. When we understand it, we let go, we soften, we have less fear. So really, when I came into the three principles understanding and I realized that my wisdom and common sense had gotten me through every panic attack. Even my first one, it was like, oh, I didn't need to prepare for that one. Maybe I don't need to prepare and obsess about
Yes.
a panic attack. Um, I always return to balance. So I had some big shifts. I think I started to look at my panic attacks with more compassion and less shame. And um and I'll say one final thing, and then I want to hear about your experience. And then really, I didn't have panic attacks for many years. And then it was about like 3 years ago or something. And I had gotten COVID, and then my kids were going back to school. And then like my dad had gotten COVID. And I was like really in my head and really anxious for my kids to go back to school. Um, and I was driving and I had this thought, like I could have a panic attack. Um, and I was like, oh, and it really woke me up because I had zero fear of panic attacks. So I think I had maybe missed the little love letters of anxiety until I had the thought. And I think even before then, I'd felt kind of overstimulated and I didn't realize it until I had the thought I could panic. And it was truly like, oh, that's what it is. And so I never ended up panicking because I just somewhere along the way had lost all fear of panic. So I was really grateful because I didn't do it as a technique. I wasn't like, okay, have no resistance. It was like, oh, that's why I feel so revved up and uncomfortable. And so
Yeah.
like the minute I had the thought I could have a panic attack, everything quieted down and I fell out of my thinking. And I didn't um and I haven't really, and now I think I've kind of recognized things. I don't know, like it hasn't gotten to that point again, but if it ever did, I'd still be grateful. I don't know, I think I see panic with more clarity. Like I still have the capability to have a panic attack because I'm never going to be not a human. Like all humans have the capability, but I think because I literally, oh, and one last thing, like a year ago, or I don't know when it was, few somewhere and in here, I woke up in the middle of the night. And my heart was beating and I was so hot and I even got out of bed and I was like, what? And then I said, I guess I'm having a panic attack, like, oh, a nocturnal panic attack. And I thought, that's interesting. I haven't really felt very stressed, but I said, well, I know what to do. And I just did nothing. And I got back in bed and I just, because I knew there's nothing to do, I just softened into it. I fell back asleep and I posted about it on social media. And someone's like, maybe you're going through perimenopause. And that was a hot flash. And I was like, it was a hot flash because the biggest thing was I was burning up. I was so hot. But whether it was a panic attack or a hot flash, it handled them the same way, which was, well, I'm not going to add on any resistance, any stress, any thinking. And so that was kind of cool because it woke me up in the night and I didn't really know what was going on. And even by just saying this is a panic attack, I was like, oh, cool, nothing to worry about. I just went back into bed. um, and so those are kind of my, it's just something I never think about until if I did, I would really just be like, oh, okay, and just soften and because I know if I drop any resistance and any fear and I just soften, it's just a rush of adrenaline that got activated and will just kind of flow past. What's been your experience with panic attacks, maybe before the principles or since kind of coming into the conversation?
I feel like before it was just the same, like, fear, and it didn't matter if it happened every single night or came out of the blue. It was like, "Oh my god, this is awful." Like, heart attack, can't breathe, kinda, like, disassociate a little, and I just remember being so afraid. But I didn't know what any of that is, and then I remember after I met you and started, like, understanding, there was, like, no more fear to it, but I still, like, had them, and it wasn't fear, but it was like a quick spook. And now it's like, oh my God, you understand the thoughts and like you understand it's a signal. It's just like your body's you're upset, you're stressed, you're in a low mood. I like to say insecure state of mind too. And it's like that's just my body's way like of having them. I think I remember texting you, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and feel like my heart that still happens. And I just get up and I sit up for a minute and I calm my breath and my heart rate and it just I'm right back asleep. I don't even give it a thought. And it's so weird to be in this, this spot, in life. And like, if it comes out now, there's no judgment on it. Like, I remember too, I said it to myself the other day and I was like, "Lily would always say that." There's no judgment and that it was okay, and it's just it's probably from the day I've had, or even actually they used to come from even if I didn't have a bad day. I would just get a panic attack. I really don't know. They would just come out of nowhere. But now it's like I have some people saying like, "How do you not resist it?" Which that's why I think I wanna do a podcast with you because coming from that place, I understand that it's so scary if it comes out of nowhere, like, you think the worst, like, I would fear losing control too, so it's kinda like, how can I explain, like, how not to resist it, you know, because I know the such great fear that they do cause, but I also, like, know the other side of it, learning the principles.
Yeah. Well, but what are some things that you know to be true that you don't fear panic attacks? Like, what have you learned? If
I
someone,
feel like yeah, fear is just a thought. Like, fear I just feel like so many of my thoughts controlled my emotions and how I felt and, like, learning from you and learning the principles, and I just, like, always knew I was never stuck, and I love hearing Sydney Banks say, like, "You come home," because that's, like, what happened to me out of no it's just, like, out of the blue, my whole life was in a spiral, panic attacks and everything, and then I woke up. I woke up from one little like, a little hearing your seeing your TikToks and like, getting into the conversation and meeting with you, it was like a split awake, and I know that, like, some people wake up a little bit, some people wake up a lot of it, and sometimes it takes a bit, and I remember just still having these feelings, but knowing this strong, weird feeling that it was all okay. So I always like, now I just feel like my fears then you can see it, though. I can see, like, when I get a panic attack, how I get like, I used to get, like, my throat would feel like it was closing up. But that was just my thought. It was my thought that my throat's probably gonna close up, you know, and then I would think about, like, if I would go eat seafood, I could be allergic, and then I should feel my throat like it was stuck a little. So it's just like when you could put all those thoughts together, you know, like, put it together that it's creating your experience. It's
yeah,
just so crazy that it's so, like I don't know, I've been doing this for almost a year, and it's like when you wake up from it, or you really I don't know how to explain it's just so you're, like, in awe of it. Like
yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting. As you were talking, it reminded me of a story because I do think it can be. I love when you said some people wake up and some people, their fear could just drop away completely. They might just have no resistance. And for me, it was definitely gradual in terms of resisting panic attacks. And so I came into the three principles conversation about almost 6 years ago. It was 6 years ago in May, and so it's April now. Or maybe actually it was April, whatever it was, right 6 years ago. And it really did change my life. And then about 4 years ago, so this is 2 years into the conversation. My life is changed. Everything is great. And I went to meet my boyfriend's daughter for the first time. And maybe this was a little less than 4 years ago or whatever, or more than 4 years ago. I don't know. And I met her and I had drank some coffee and then also like I ate a bunch of dark chocolate. I'm saying this, but who knows if I'm making that up and it came out of no reason. And so, or that's what it can feel like. So I went to meet her for the first time and we met at a coffee place and I sat down and then I felt a rush of adrenaline. And I had this thought, oh my gosh, I wish we were walking and I'm sitting down and his daughter was like 18 or 19 at the time. She was a young woman, but still, like, it was the first time I was meeting my boyfriend's daughter. I obviously wanted to make a good impression. And I hadn't realized that I had probably said to myself, you cannot feel anxious here, and so I sat down, I felt a rush of adrenaline and I resisted it. And because I also haven't been an anxious person being with her dad. Like, it hasn't been much a part of my life because I met him after the principles. And so I felt this rush of adrenaline and I was like, oh no. One, I don't want to be like a weirdo. What am I going to do? Call her dad, like my boyfriend, and be like, I'm like And so I remember having a flood of thinking, because that's what happens. It's like our imagination. I felt this anxiety. I resisted it. I had more thinking. My imagination showed me, like, what am I going to, like, lie down on the floor of the bathroom? Like, I've never called her dad since I've been anxious. Like, and so, but the thing is, I knew enough that I didn't really do anything. And actually, how I handled it, this is the coolest part, that because I just, even though I resisted a little bit, I had enough of this understanding. And I said to her, I'm feeling really anxious. Or I said something like, I kind of feel like I could panic. And she said, oh, yeah, I understand it. And she's a model. So she said, oh, a bunch of models and I on a shoot were talking about it yesterday. And she acted like it was no big deal. And I think because in the past, I would have resisted it so much and would have made up a lie and been like, I've got a migraine. I got to get out of here. So there was some
Yeah.
part of me that had, even though there was still a tiny bit of fear and resistance, there was enough okayness for me to just be truthful. And I didn't plan that. And that's the coolest thing, because we don't need to plan it. I said that to her, and her response allowed me just to soften. And my adrenaline dropped a little, and I was like, I can ride this out. And so, and I just started listening. And so then my next thing was, oh, just get to know her. And I, when we are listening, we're present, so I got out of my head, and it was really cool. But with a panic attack, it is just a rush of adrenaline, but I had enough just presence that I could feel it coming and then feel it coming down, and then it was the wave, and I'd be like, oh, this will come down. And so I felt probably anxious for, I don't know, half an hour, and I did have thinking of, I really want her to like me, and is this getting in the way of our conversation? So I wasn't like instantly peaceful, like I really want to give people a real. But then I got involved in the conversation, because we can either be in our head or in our life. And then I got into that conversation with her. We had a great time. And by the end of our coffee time, I was completely at peace. And I actually think I felt stronger because of that experience, and I think before, when I was first healing, I think my expectation was never panic, never anxiety. And every little time, like, I felt on top of the world. I took myself shopping after that. I remember putting more money in my meter, and we were right near, a street where I could shop. I just skipped down the road. I felt, and I wouldn't have felt so powerful if I hadn't almost had a panic like attack. But, and so I think that started to set the stage. And I've had a couple little moments like that. Um, honestly, probably just 4 or so in the past 4 years, but and many other moments in between. But like that was just that was a turning point, because I think probably until then it was like, okay, now I know the principles, and I'm never going to panic, and I'm never going to have an anxiety. And it
Love
was
that.
like, no, that was just life. That was just that.
Yes, I love it. I love the feeling now when I get panicked or if get anxious or feel that way. Like, I'm so open to it. I'd never put pressure on it anymore, or care if somebody's going to make fun of me or whatever. And it's like this deep feeling that I know that this is going to go away. I'm not going to stay with any of these symptoms for a very long time. I mean, it could be half hour, it could be an hour, but really, by the time I'm present and not focused on my thoughts or my body sensations are feeling, I'm fine. And it gives me this lighthearted feeling, even if there's even like a tiny bit of like spooking. Plus, I think of that too when you said that we just spook ourselves sometimes with our thoughts and everything. So I
Yeah.
feel like some of those things have helped me generously so much. And it's really coming into this conversation was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
And now that I think back to it, I didn't have to you don't have to do much, you know?
Yeah.
I remember talking to you and telling you that I felt like I was doing too much of it,
Yeah.
and, like, I stopped, like, resisting this workload of stuff, and, like, I even took a 2-week break of principles and everything, and it was like, I naturally came back into it, and I came back into it deeper, and I was like, "What is going on?" So I felt like I've just been feeling very at ease. It's
I love that. That's really
Now
cool.
I don't feel ashamed, you know? You beat yourself up if you take a break or if I take a nap or anything. So it feels good to not resist anything. I feel like there was people like me who were or had a lot of panic attacks, like, I would resist a lot of things, and now there's absolutely no resisting, and it's just this is life to me. We had an earthquake today, and I was sitting on the couch fine.
I know as we're recording this for people that are watching in the future date, it's April 5th, 2024, and there is an earthquake in New Jersey. In New York. Wait, Massachusetts. Wait, now I'm like, oh,
No,
where?
it was New Jersey, but I
Okay,
guess people in Mass and New York
okay,
City, and, like, I felt it. I'm in, like, upstate New York.
okay.
But it was funny though, because I was reading I couldn't wait to tell you this. I can read things now. I can read stories because I know, like, my thoughts aren't gonna pinpoint them onto my own like, me. And so that was such a great thing. I was reading about it, and people were being conspiracies and, like, doing theories, and I was like, "Well, it's time for me to just hop off," and I did that, and no pressure, no resistance to what I didn't what I did or didn't wanna do, and but I couldn't believe I just sat on my couch, and I just thought my dog was shaking the whole house. It was insane.
Isn't it? But you know what? There's thought in action. Something happens and we have a thought, whether it's true or not. But that's kind of cool. You had the thought, oh, I guess my dog's shaking the house, and it was actually an earthquake. You know, and
I
I
actually thought of you because I believe you were the one who said, like, when real things like this happen, we're not a complete mess, you know? I'm not, like I wasn't anxious at all. I was just sitting there, and it was so and I did hear a couple people were messaging me and like, "Did you feel the is this an earthquake?" And I'm like, "No, I don't think so. It's calm." But I could sit here and think of 10,000 ways of what a real earthquake to me would be like, and I would be panicked.
You never know though.
That's true. You never do know.
You never know. You never know what future you is going to do. But also, the thing is, what if it was fine that you panicked in an earthquake? Like, and then you can settle down. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
sometimes we have a normal reaction to something that is scary, and so I'm not like, you can also let yourself off the hook there too, like,
Yeah. I think I did a little after hearing there was, like, a statewide thing on my phone, and I was like, "Could this be serious?" But I didn't, like I turned back over here and was like, "If it's serious, I know that it would be okay." I mean, I have a kitchen and then I just started you can see where the loop comes in. Okay, I have a kitchen table, I could grab the baby, I could go underneath, I gotta check this person, let me call my husband. But I was like it was crazy to have, like, a little bit of fear, but then just be calmed right back down. It's like I could see where my wisdom came in. Well, you don't really need to fear that because you do have a kitchen table. If things fall down, you don't have stuff up high. And it was like, and I caught myself like, what? Norm Old me would be in a hole for a week, probably wondering if it was going to come back and like participate, like waiting for it.
yeah. Well, I really love that because I think it's oftentimes our anxious voice is so loud, and then our wisdom is very quiet. And then what happens is like, oh, our wisdom's louder. And sure, we might have some anxious thoughts, but it's like, oh, wisdom's right there too, where you have one thought and then here's a bunch of kind of wise, common sense thoughts. And I also really love that you shared that you can read things. You can read the news or you could read posts and then also know when enough is enough. Um, all right.
No scary movies yet, though, but we're going to work there.
I know. And I'm not saying anyone ever has to watch a scary movie. I don't think I watched scary movies for many years. And I watched one last year. First, I watched it it just
Yeah.
occurred to me. I don't know. I want to watch. Well, I was trying to find something on Netflix and then and then I realized it was going to be a scary movie. But I was watching a movie, which actually this was like a couple months ago on the plane, and it's not even like that scary of a movie. It sounds so silly. It was something I love from the 90s. And I thought it was going to be like a nostalgic vibe with like Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman. Um, and then it got a bit scary and I turned it off. And it was so silly, but I felt more like I was like, this guy came back from the dead in the movie and I felt uncomfortable. And I just like, because I think also what to me, that's your point of like, we just give ourselves permission, where you were like, oh, I'm going to take a break. And it was like, I don't need to white knuckle it through a scary movie if I'm not enjoying it. And so I just said, new movie.
Like,
I wonder if something happened with your connection, Fallon. I can't hear you right now. You got frozen.
I was talking to you and then we both paused.
I know. I don't know. Well, you're back.
I'm back.
Yeah.
But
Well, yeah. What are some things that you wish people knew about panic? Since that's kind of the focus of our, or you know what, on the flip side, about innate health or about our experience or, or anything.
I
Now,
love it. Yeah. I love innate health. I love being able to like I still have my normal human experiences, but like I look at it like, everybody has innate health and I don't, like, maybe they are in an insecure state of mind or in a low mood. So I don't take things personally anymore, which is very weird. 'Cause I never thought I'd get there. And the panic attacks for me too, it's just it's so hard to like tell somebody like, you want to like put you're gonna be okay, like just calm down. But like
yeah,
it's like they have to feel it first and they have to like once I feel like that thought process goes like and you can recognize like you've had all these feelings before and you've had these thoughts before and none of it's come true. I feel like that was the point to me like that opened my eyes where I started to relax a little. And now when I get panic attacks, I always try to like remember that. Like at first it might not happen right away because like when in the split second of one you're really freaked out.
yeah,
And so when I recognize that, that's where my good feeling comes in. Like I try to look towards the good feeling and I know that even if I'm going to because I sometimes disassociate. If I'm going to disassociate for 5 minutes or whatever, I know that within a few minutes or an hour I'm going to go back to normal. And that was like the biggest thing for me because I feared that I was always going to feel that way when I had a panic attack.
yeah.
Like it was never going to end and there was no possible way that this was just some adrenaline rush and these people are lying to me. It's crazy now because I don't even look at it as a rush of adrenaline. I look at it as it's just me. It's my body. My body is trying to tell me something and I will return to balance. And it's like I will come home and I will feel like myself again. And that right there is what gives me it's so hard to explain to people, but it's just this feeling and this gut feeling. And then
Yeah.
before you know it, I don't even actually think about them anymore. Now that I don't think like, what if I wake up today and have one? Or what if I remember I used to tell you all the time, I dread like waking up and thinking about the same intrusive thoughts again. But even that's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm not saying it disappears. I still get them. I think of you all the time because my husband just bought a new knife, a stabbing knife. And you know what I do? I tuck it behind all the other stuff still and I put no pressure on it. No, nothing. Who cares? I just don't want to look at it. And that's fine.
Oh yeah. I always put the stabby knife away,
You got to put it away.
I don't mind to use the stabby knife, but and this is a joke. It's yeah, Fallon and I were talking a couple months ago, and it actually it was funny because I always thought that, and then my boyfriend said something like, "Oh, put this stabby knife," or who I don't know which one of us said it first. I'm like, I always think that it looks like such a murderous knife, and so and um I very rarely have intrusive thoughts. I never think about them. But something about that knife, I'm like, don't leave that murder knife out here. Like, but I don't
Uh,
be light about it. It's not like we're saying there's no pressure. And when you're light about stuff, you are moving in a positive direction. If we make something serious, it just doesn't move us in a good direction. It doesn't move us in a light, good feeling. And so I really love that you were saying that. Um, and I think I have so much lightness around panic. And even like there doesn't, when I got woken up in the night, whenever it was, with a hot flash, which I thought was a nocturnal panic attack, it did feel like it came out of no reason. Fine. There doesn't have to be a reason, like we don't need to be, why'd this happen? It was like, I just know. To me, when I think of innate health, there's so much we could talk about, but it's that we are designed so beautifully as human beings. We are designed to go back to balance. Our mind has a self-correcting system. So when I was literally woken up in the night, I was a bit discombobulated for 1 minute, or who knows how long it was, 30 seconds, 2 minutes. And then I'm like, oh, I got my bearings. And the thought that I had, kind of like what you said, when it was like, I guess the dog's moving. And I said, I guess this is a nocturnal panic attack. Interesting. I knew so deeply I'm designed beautifully. So I just closed my eyes and it was like, I just went back to sleep. I mean, I'm not saying, oh, I instantly fell back asleep. Like I think my heart was pounding, but I don't know. Then I fell asleep. And then when someone said hot flash, it was kind of like, oh, that was an earthquake. Okay, interesting. But I never thought about it again. It's never really happened again. And I didn't have to spend any time. I knew for me, also it was kind of interesting of like considering perimenopause. And I know that's something I've been going through, I think, for the past year. And most of the time I don't have any symptoms. And if I do see them as love letters, but I don't start to analyze and think, what am I doing wrong? And I'm stressing my body out. I just see if I do have any love letters, well, no more thinking is going to be helpful. So I just kind of see it as an opportunity to take the pressure off myself more, even more of like, just be even lighter about it, but not in a forceful way, because I know I don't need to think about something. My wisdom can come through. And, I think before, even after coming into the principles, sometimes I would get scared of like, if I have a symptom and if I have anxiety, I'm doing it wrong. And I would add on more thinking rather than seeing it as just life. And well, no more thinking is needed here. It's even more of an opportunity not to. Because if I go there, it is more of a reflecting mindset. If there's something to see, there's something to do, I'll see it, but I don't need to focus on it. I don't need to think about
I
it.
like to tell myself that too.
Yeah.
I have to say that because I could go there and I could add so much. Like I could make a scenario up in a second. And that's why I thought the moment I realized thought and like what thought was and how I changed my relationship with it, it was like so life changing. So now I could go there, I could make up 10 scenarios for something, but it's not going to be good. And I don't want to go there. I know that it's just my thinking. So I try to look over here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's so interesting, kind of even about the earthquake thing. Because first there was movement. You said, oh, I guess it's my dog scratching. You didn't need to figure out. And then by whatever people were like, is this an earthquake? I don't know. And then you're like, oh, this is an earthquake. Cool. Like you didn't have to go and analyze and figure it out. Like, like always, if there's something to see, even in the world too, someone will tell us.
Yeah,
Like,
well, I'll know.
you know, um, yeah. Yeah.
I
Mm.
just think that 3 principles are such a beautiful thing, and I say that, but it's not even a thing, it's just it's not even like a way of life, it's nothing to do, it's just who we are,
Yeah.
and it's like who we like, us as human beings, like what we were, like, meant to be is how I feel about it and see it, and everything makes sense. That's why I love when somebody gets it, and it's like, "Yes, yes, I have that feeling that you have now." Like,
Yeah.
I have one client too, and when she got it, I was like, oh, because you can't force it, it's so natural, and
Yeah.
it's like we gotta see it for ourselves, and we it's not even see it, we have to feel it. We look for the feeling, and that's what I always tell myself, like, "Look for that feeling, go towards your good feeling."
Yeah. 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 Well, and kind of adding on to that with our thinking too, like truth, because our who we are, like our innate state is one of well-being and peace of mind. Truth feels like peace, and so we get to believe the thoughts that feel good, that feel peaceful, even if there's something to do, like I remember there was a time when you wore a heart rate monitor and it was like, oh, even though it's like, hey, this is something I should do. Or if I think I should go to the doctor, I'm not like, it's like, oh, sure, go get it checked out. Or even the statement, oh, that was an earthquake. Sometimes it's like, then the thoughts, there were some wise thoughts that felt like truth. Well, I've got a table and I've got a doorway. Like, do you know what I mean? The catastrophic thoughts of like, the world's going to end and what's going to happen? Like, rather than, well,
I did think that for a split second.
no, that's the thought that I had. Like, oh my God, my son's only 9 and what's happening in the world? And it's like,
Right?
that doesn't feel good. And then I had that thought too, even though then right underneath it, it was like, I don't know. My next thought to me was like, everything's going to work out how it's meant to be worked out. And that thought felt like truth to me. And that just felt like peace.
Yeah. Like a more clear thought, one that you just I like to think too, it's like the thoughts that you feel good and trusted. Like you can trust that thought and it makes you feel calm. I always like to try to go in that direction. But I always like to tell people that I can go the opposite direction too, but I just don't stay there long. Like I like how you say it, like you don't feel good there. And you don't have to be stuck where you don't feel good.
Yeah. Well, and feeling bad, and it's in a quote, whatever, like that actually wakes us up. That's feedback. Just as if we touched the bath and it was really, really hot. Like we want to be able to be like, that is too hot for me to go in.
Mhm.
And so when we don't, when we're entertaining thoughts that don't feel good, that's just letting us know that our thinking isn't really serving us right now. And we can keep going there just as we're free thinkers. We're free to keep thinking it. But as you and I now get to see, wait, I'm also free to go in that other direction, which is, I love how you say it. It's like, I didn't know that there was that other direction. We can't control our thoughts. We don't need to because thoughts are always coming and going, but we get to decide which thoughts we bring to life and which thoughts. But it's funny because even if you're entertaining like really good thoughts, they just flow and you forget about it. Sometimes you might be like, what would I do if I won $1 million? And you're like, this is what I do. And then like, you're like, well, now what am I going to make for dinner? Like, it's
It's in
just,
and out.
thought just flows. And that's the potential of all thinking, scary
Yeah.
thinking, fun
Bad
thinking.
thinking, good thinking.
Yeah.
I
It's like,
remember, it was Judith Sedgman. She was telling a story, and she was saying how somebody at one of her, where she worked was telling her about a thought, and she was like, "Well, you can think it as long as you wanna think it. You're the one that's you're the thinker, and as long as you wanna stay there, you can stay there, or you can just look in the other direction." It's that simple, and it woke that person up, and they were like, "Oh, I am the thinker." We can't control the thoughts, but to know that, like, I was the thinker of my own thoughts, I was like, "Ah," and really, I like how you say it though, because I could have a thought, where the heck did I need to go to the grocery store for? And then all of a sudden, I'm at the grocery store and I forgot about every single thing that I knew I needed to get there, and I knew I should have wrote a letter, like a note. And then, but it could trick you sometimes, certain thinking. You'll be like, "Oh god, why is this back again?"
I know. Well, I think Aaron Turner used like a funny example that I liked of like kind of anxiety and it puts on a different hat. And sometimes you're like, you might get tricked, but sometimes you're like, it's you're just wearing a different hat.
Yeah.
Sometimes maybe it puts on a hat and a mustache and glasses and we don't see that it's thought, because it feels like truth, but that's where, Dick and Benter had just did a talk in the Three Principles Global Community about one psychological problem and one spiritual answer. And the one psychological problem is like holding on to thought that we think is true. And then the answer is, letting go of that thought, falling out of our head into our heart, and it's like, it's so simple. And that's true for panic attacks or health anxiety or intrusive thought. It's like we get into this fear, this resistance, holding tight onto thoughts that we think are true, that feel really true, especially in a low mood, especially in an insecure mood. And then we see, oh, it's so simple. It is just because it's like holding, holding, holding. In the video, I'm squeezing my hand and my nails are pressing into my palms. That pain, anxiety, and tension or stress or upset, it wakes us up and invites us to let go and soften. And then it's like we don't even have to do anything. You know what? That's why I think settling after a panic attack is the most natural thing because we can have the start of a panic attack. Like if someone open the door of my bedroom really quickly, I would startle. My heart would start
Yeah.
to pound. Um, I would probably feel really jittery or whatever. Like I would get startled. I would have a physical response, but then say, whatever, it was the wind or something, or my boyfriend was rushing in here. I would see that I wasn't in danger and I wouldn't have to work hard for my heart to go back to normal and for me not to feel startled. That's how we're designed. That's innate health. And so it's like we kind of understand that where we get spooked, we know techniques are needed. We just, that thought flows away. We're not going to keep scaring ourselves and remember when someone opened the door on me or whatever. And so I think when people can see, there are so many instances where, whether it's settling after getting startled, or not for TMI, but somebody had once, just like last week, was saying how somebody was reading a description of all these symptoms and you'd think they were going to lead to a panic attack, but they said, this isn't an orgasm.
Oh God,
And it was like, after you have an orgasm, you're not like, okay, what techniques am I going to do to calm down? No, like your heart's beating,
no.
you have all these things and you settle, or after you exercise too, your heart's beating, you're sweating, blah, blah, blah.
But
You
it all
cool
comes
down,
down.
like it all comes down. Nothing, we don't, and we forget. Same if we get, our stress goes up, our anxiety goes up, we start to panic. Like, oh, just noticing that, leaving yourself alone, come to balance.
I love that so much. I love that orgasm. I've never thought of it like that till I heard you just say it, and it's like, you know what? That yes, because I've, you know, and it's like, yes, you could totally mistake that though. Like, oh my God, am I having a panic attack? I don't understand because I was just great about it.
I know. Well, it's funny. It was somebody who was in the community who had shared it, and I should try to find that because it was like this person was listing all the symptoms, and everyone's about to guess panic, and it was like orgasm. I thought, oh, that's so funny.
I love it.
I know. I know. Well, this was so great. Is there any parting
Yes.
words or anything else you want anybody to know?
I just loved doing this with you, and I loved how towards the end there we just well, we you threw in thoughts because that's the biggest thing to me when you can see, that we're the thinkers and we're not stuck with anything. We're not stuck with panic, anxiety, fear, even though to me it's all like natural human, you know, but we're not stuck with anything. And it's all thought and we're the creators.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think you were actually I felt like you said something about thought which sparked it for me. And I want to say one more thing about thought though too, because we really feel our thinking. We have a real sensory experience. Sometimes it just is a passing thought, but I want people to know that Fallon and I know how big it can feel when our thinking gets brought to life. Like we truly, because I think sometimes when we're on the other side, people are like, how are they just saying it's all thought, but it is, we can, consciousness brings our thoughts to life, whether it's true or not. We can just as, if we might think, am I having a heart attack? It can feel really real. Or am I a horrible person? If it's an intrusive thought, or am I losing my mind? Like, we can really feel our thinking. It's a big sensory experience. But when you can understand it and kind of it burst the bubble where you're like, okay, you see
On
behind
to you.
anxiety is distorted thought that's temporary and changes all on its own. It's so freeing, and I think that's what you love so much to me about we're never stuck because thought changes. It can't help. And our experience is made up of thought, but it's always changing. We can't help it. It changes all on its own. And that to me is, yeah, the most liberating thing when we see it. Because then we are just one thought away from a whole new experience. And it's not one specific thought. It's just that, like, you can be really irritated. And then a whole new thought can come, or you can be anxious and a new thought can come.
And I love what Linda Pransky said that notice the feeling that comes with the thought.
Mm.
And like those things would always stick out so much to me. Because if you can just sit back like you've always told me and just notice, and you see it.
Yeah, yeah. You're just noticing without judgment.
Yeah.
And somebody had said in a podcast, it was Robin who really kind of sparked this insight. She said, you can't be curious and resistant. And I think to me, you've always brought such a curious curious in such a great way about learning the principles, about being curious about your experience. And so for anybody here listening, if you're like, okay, I want to resist panic attacks less, just get curious about your experience as a human being, about anything that we've chatted about, or anything that you've heard on the podcast, or anything on Falon's videos or mine or anybody else's. It's like, because we never want you to believe anything we're saying. It's just like, see it for yourself, because that's when it's so cool when you have your own insights and you get to be curious and you get to see. And I think that's truly when I first started being curious about the principles. It was like truly curious. I did think it was kind of another technique, and now it's just a way of just life.
Yeah,
It's just what's happening, whether we know about it or not. But I was like, so wait, is my thinking really going to flow? Like, that I don't have to do these techniques. I can just, and I just was curious about it. And I think the curiosity truly did drop some of my resistance. Because you can't be curious and resistant. It's so true. Be curious about
it
that. See,
is.
it's true.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Fallon, for reaching out. And so, yeah, if anybody, you follow Fallon or I, and you know, you want us to talk about something, I think next we're going to talk about setbacks, which neither of us actually even experience, but we do have life. Life does show up, which
Yeah,
sometimes includes uncomfortable experiences, but that's maybe what we'll talk about next time.
absolutely.
Okay. Well, thank you. Have a
Such
wonderful
an
weekend.
exciting feeling. You too, and thank you for letting me reach out, and I can't wait to talk again.
Yes, yeah, we'll text. We'll find another time. Okay. Bye.
Okay, perfect. Bye, guys.